Hello, welcome to another My Life in Objects video. So I thought it's been quite a while since I've done one of these, so it was due for a revisit, and I was trying to rack my brains and think in terms of the sort of things I haven't really talked about much, and I was minded to feature this book. So it's probably come up before, but mainly from about, I would say, are we talking late 90s, very late 90s, so like 98, 99, through to 2007, 2008, I suppose. So roughly just under 10 years, I was involved in teaching at a business school, which was part of East Surrey College. And I taught mainly on two programs there, or two units. There was a number of other things I did, but the bulk of my probably teaching over there was on these two units. One was the Certificate in Management Studies, and I was teaching on a unit about information management. And then the second one, which was a second year course for the diploma students, which was a postgrad course, and that was the unit on management information systems. I did other things here and there as was required of me, but during that process I found myself in a position where I had to teach statistics to non-statisticians. Now, I have received over the years statistical training prior to this actually, and my postgrad had a lot of statistics in it because I did quality control units, which I did in the mid-90s, early mid-90s. And then prior to that, actually at school, when I stayed on a year, I actually did O-level statistics as well. So the challenge for me was to try to get either people that didn't like maths or were just unfamiliar with basic statistics, a nice sort of entry-level I'm trying to think of the best word here, a nice entry-level grasp that would be sufficient and would be good enough to augment their whatever management, information management they were doing, whatever management information systems they might be using, those sort of things. And this was a really useful book. Now, I use this to augment another book I used quite a bit, which is one that was specifically on management information systems. But I found that this book, the reason why I want to talk about it is it's aged a lot better, because it's not too technologically specific, whereas the management information systems ones, sections of it are incredibly technologically specific, and things have moved on quite a bit. Although in the case of the other book, and maybe I'll feature it at some point, it does dwell a lot more on the people side of the management information systems. And there's only a couple of chapters, maybe even 3, where they specifically mention technology, and it's those chapters which are a problem. But if you're looking for an interesting book to maybe see if it's still available, then this is a good starting point. You know, if you're in that position of needing to understand sort of enough statistics to be able to help you manage information or process information or whatever you need to do with information within some sort of management capacity. And it was interesting in the duration of time that I was teaching on the course, because over time, you know, the two courses, the certificate and the diploma, the certificate was basically angled at supervisory management up to sort of middle, and then the diploma was middle management and senior. So, you know, but what was happening is there was a lot of roles in the UK in the 90s that were getting, in the 2000s, that were getting merged, and as a consequence there was a lot more people who were being given sort of supervisory responsibilities, who previously hadn't, and they were having to sort of grasp with statistics relating to all sorts of processes. So this is where this book came in, and I just used to use it on particular units where I needed to be talking about certain things, and it sort of helped me decide how deep in the weeds I needed to get, because that's always a problem. If you have an understanding yourself of something, that's fine, but then you need to work out how am I going to pitch this at a level that people will actually understand what the hell I'm talking about. So I've just been flicking through there over mainly the introductory sections, which are more about, you know, the organisation and how things slot in. And now we get into the sort of meat and potatoes. So there's a section on design and implementation. Now this is a bit that probably hasn't aged well in this book, but it does have an interesting section on things like people issues. And then we get on to the part 2, which is the statistics. So this is somewhat timeless, although of course nowadays we might be using slightly more advanced statistics possibly, but I think it's essential to learn the real basics first. So there's, you know, just bits on tabulation, you know, things like frequency analysis. These are the sort of things actually when I did my O-level in statistics we spent a lot of time on. Distribution curves, frequency distribution, Pareto analysis. I'm trying to think of specifically that cumulative frequency graph that you sometimes come across. And then we've got diagrammatic and graphical methods. So then we actually go on to charts, and there are lots of interesting considerations about, you know, where you're using charts to indicate an increase or a decrease, and how you might scale that and make it more obvious about what you're talking about. And what I like about it is it picks fairly easy to understand examples that people might grasp. So you've got things like bread sales. You know, my own work in trying to teach people some of the stuff in Excel, some of the statistics that you can do in Excel, I often use things like lemonade stand statistics as a way of sort of illustrating basic statistics. But here they're using bread sales, and they're showing things like, you know, here's the cumulative frequency chart as well, so you can do all your wonderful, you know, 30, 70, 80, 20, 90, 10, however you want to do it, analysis. Then we get on to actual numerical methods, so things like the mean. Again, there's quite a lot of tabulation in the book as well, which is cool because it sort of shows you how the sort of intermediary steps work when you're having to deal with these numerical methods. Now, of course, nowadays we'd all stick this into a spreadsheet, even back then, or you know, we wouldn't see necessarily the interim calculations, but it's nice to see that all laid out, because there's a number of interim calculations that contribute to other calculations which, you know, aren't often discussed but are useful. And what I like about this as well, there's a lot of, you can see here, like walkthroughs of stuff. It's also a great book if you want to practice programming. When I learned programming in the early days, I always used to use it to solve statistical problems, just because that's what I was interested in. And it's quite fun to take these and create a little app to do this sort of stuff. You know, you can write a little, almost like a command line program that does this, and it's quite good for programming challenges actually to take this stuff and convert it into code, because it's so well laid out stepwise as well. So you can sort of write pseudocode out and those sort of things and try it in different languages. So we go on to probability distributions. I used to be fascinated by this when I first learned it. All these different things that you can analyse. sampling, estimation and inference, and I had to understand quite a lot of this back when I was working in quality control and studying it. And also there's a little bit about, you know, random sampling and how that works, which is super useful. And this is a great book actually for multiple disciplines if you're involved in quality control or management information systems, or just understanding how maybe certain statistical calculations work, that sort of stuff. And then we've got the dreaded hypothesis testing. So what I liked about this is I learned hypothesis testing when I was doing my HNC. In my original career, I worked in science, in immunology and microbiology. And when I came to do my higher national certificate in biochemical techniques, we had to study hypothesis testing, and I had a real hard time with it. But this book really lays it out well. And we got stuff like, that's the other one at the time I really struggled with, the whole chi-squared. I've got another book that goes through like 100 different statistical tests as well. Oh, there's good old regression and correlation. This used to be actually another one of my favourites. And it's a great thing to learn if you're sort of teetering on getting into machine learning and AI as well. It's normally one of the earliest sort of things you look at is regression and correlation before you get into all the complicated stuff like neural nets and things like that. It you know, provides a really good basis for understanding things like, you know, other things you might get exposed to within AI and, you know, obviously data science generally. And we've got time series, again, another thing that is pretty essential as a bedrock to other data science techniques. You know, sorts of things like trend analysis. I've had to do a number of things over the year that have incorporated those. Index numbers, and then it's interesting as well, like a section on dealing with like public data and interpreting indexes and various other things, which is super useful if you're having to pull in data from sort of outside of your remit. A bit on the stock market, and this as well. Again, this very much touches on other techniques outside of things like neural networks and machine learning that are also used within AI, things like decision trees and all the probability behind that. And then the final part, which is part 3, which is probably massively out of date now, which is about, there's an introduction to information technology. But again, what I like about this is it does keep it fairly broad and reflects on, you know, technology generally, and so it does have a little bit more of a timeless quality to it as well. You know, it's talking about things like simulation, which are still relevant today with what is it? Is it like digital twins and things like that? But yeah, it's a bit about. Yeah, this is interesting. You know, I remember having to do quite a bit of electronic funds transfer in about, so again, sometime in the actually it would have been the late 90s when I was programming accounting software, doing modifications, and yeah, stuff like that, using the IBM. They had their own like global sort of, it wasn't, I don't know if it was based on internet technology. We were slowly moving over to using internet based electronic funds transfer. Yeah, and then we got a nice little glossary at the back there. So yeah, this is a really cool book. Again, I tend to grab these and don't do a lot of research as to whether they're still available, because I just love and doing that and talking about the stories around the purchase of the book more than whether or not the book might be available now. But I'm sure this is such a cool book, it must have been updated, or maybe there's still copies kicking around out there. So thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in a future video.